G'day, I'm Execute. Welcome to the Inforunners. Today I'm joined by Astropub. How you doing, buddy?
Doing good. I'm doing better after getting over COVID. I know you're still kind of suffering from something. Not COVID, because you don't have
I'm
COVID.
not sure. I'm not sure. I might have had it. I was really worried about it because my symptoms seem similar to your own. So yeah, we'll see.
Yeah.
All right, so with that, this is a video we've often kind of talked about, but it's kind of always been hard to explain and try to show. So I actually sat down, and I can see why no one's ever done it before. Let's put it that way. It took me about 10 hours in Excel going through, checking the in-game prices and the out-of-game prices and things like that, and comparing them and cross-referencing and trying to find some of the cool ones to show off. But that's what we're going to do today. I've also got an infographic in the description below that you can open and follow along if you wish to. I'm also going to post that on Twitter and Reddit and stuff like that about the same time that this video goes live. So with that, we've also got some caveats. So this doesn't take into account gameplay. So you might have one ship that has lots of gameplay and a ship that doesn't have a lot of gameplay. That doesn't take that into account. Obviously, there's changes coming with balance and stuff like that, and future development, price changes, all that type of thing. That's not taken into account either, right?
It's important to remember that like the economy of Star Citizen eventually is going to change it so that every one of these ships will be variable depending on where you purchase it and what the quanta wants. And because CIG changes sometimes patch to patch, they can change these prices. This is not meant as a definitive, you will 100% get this value out of it. We're using the current values, especially as we're going into the biggest sale season for CIG, where they're selling all of their ships, so you know what we're talking about when we say bang for your buck.
Yeah, exactly. I will say there were some really obvious ones, like, so straight off the bat, I'll say it just showed how bad vehicles were. Vehicles, just stay away from vehicles with a 10-foot barge pole. Every single one of them was in the bottom third of the list. So that, you know, there's not really a good one among them. And even, actually, the very first one, I'll just kick it off then, because the actual first one is a vehicle comparison. So there you go. So both these cost $30, but in-game, 88,000 versus 251,400. That's actually quite a big difference in price, 2.5 times at least.
In current gameplay metrics, it's effectively like maybe 1, maybe 2 gameplay sessions of about 4 hours you can earn a the hover quad, but it'll require you maybe a week of work to get an alpha, a Mustang Alpha. So to give you some physical gameplay comparisons.
No, that's a good one. So yeah, but yeah, as you can see, it's, I don't know, like as a starting player, there are, and I'm going to be honest with you, there are a lot of people that come into this game and they don't have a lot of money. So, you know, and I know there are a lot of us that do have really big fleets, but you've got to remember, this is a game for everyone, not just for those that are the mega whales. And obviously a whale wouldn't care. They just wouldn't blink twice at this stuff. But like where I started, like I'm not the wealthiest person. I'm very unwealthy. And when I, like, to be honest with you, I'm almost the complete opposite of Algrid, where Algrid's got a lot of money to spend, but he made a lot of mistakes. So it actually does give you, between me and Algrid, you do actually get a lot of different perspective because we're coming at it from different places. So it is a good way to look at it. But anyway, all right, we'll kick it on to the next one. So you go up to the Avenger this time with $55.
So much.
Versus the MT in game, which is $20 more, yet it is hello, what's going on here, right?
Yep. And to highlight this even further, generally speaking, 1,000 UEC costs $1, I believe, $1 per 1,000 UEC. So this is the equivalent of, if you were to purchase this with in-game with UEC with UEC purchase, the
Cyclone
is cheaper to just pull out your credit card and buy UEC than it is to buy with actual cash.
Yep, that's it in a nutshell.
50%, almost over 50% cheaper, or almost 50% cheaper.
So to the MT's credit, though, I will also point out the fact that all Cyclones cost the same price at the moment, right? So obviously that shows that they probably need to get in there and change the prices a little bit, right? So we are, again, we're going to do our due diligence here and show both sides of the coin. So obviously that looks like something that is going to change in the future. But yeah. All right, on to the next one. So this time around, I've gone to the Titan Renegade versus the Reliant Mako. Again, the Reliant is cheaper. Sorry, the Reliant. The Titan Renegade is cheaper, and the Reliant is more expensive. But then you get in game, and you can see there's a price discrepancy again. And one thing you'll notice is as we go up the list, this first bunch is all price based, and so they don't share similar gameplays. But you'll also notice at the low end, it is a lot more. The gaps are not as big, but as we go up, you'll notice bigger and bigger gaps as we go up. It gets kind of ludicrous, actually. But yeah, so yeah, the Renegade one is a skinned one, and it is kind of hard to get. And I would say these are two. The reason I picked these two is they're kind of more rare ships. They're not ones that you see every day of the week. So yeah. All right, on to the next one. All right. So this I think this is the epitome of the problem with vehicles. I think this really shows. This is the most expensive vehicle we currently have. But yeah, you can look right there. I'd say that
until the Centurion comes out, but the Centurion is likely going to be about the same price, if not more, because of maybe a little less, but it'll be around the same ballpark.
I'm expecting it to be less because of the missiles.
Less destructive.
Yeah. So but that said, I still think I think it's $120, so it already is less dollar value. So I'm expecting it to be less in-game value, but we'll see. Based on some of the stuff you're going to see today, that logic does not make sense. It sounds logical what I just said, but just remember when we get to the 600i, what I said, and then I'll bring up logic again, and you'll go, huh? But anyway. So yeah, so the DER. Yeah, and I think anyone would sit there and go, the DER is way better value than the Ballista, but for some reason they're priced the same. And yeah, I think this does harken back to like what we've said before. Like, there's a designer's price, and then there's like a marketing price, and they are just not lining up at the moment. And I'd really like them to line up. Hopefully, they will in the future. All right, so my least favorite ship in the game, the Steel. Which is $235 versus the Andromeda, which is $240. And as you can clearly see there, it's almost half the price.
The Steel is cheaper than the Black, by the way.
It is. Which is crazy. So another way you could look at this is what I probably should have done is grab the Black and just had a Steel versus Black comparison. But it is kind of crazy.
$110 versus $235. The Steel is 1,300,000, I should say. And then the Black is, I believe, 1,500,000. So in game right now. So. And it's $135 or $125 more cheaper or more expensive to get the Steel.
So this kind of highlights I haven't deliberately gone out and grabbed the worst ones, right? I tried to grab ones that were around the similar dollar amount in this first lot. And in the second lot, I've grabbed about 5 that were similar rolls. All right, to try and show some variation. And that's the hard part about collecting all this data. You have to manually go through it all, right? And when you're talking about the sheer number of ships in game, that's a lot to go through. Like, it literally took me all day yesterday to do this from go to woe. It was quite a lengthy process. But anyway, that's why no one's ever done it before, because it's just too much time. Anyway, on to the next one. So yeah, this is a really good example of why I hate the Ares.
Yeah.
Same price point, very different. And I do actually, this and a few other things, I now have an appreciation for the 400i. It is actually in the top 5 best value ships in the game, based on its price to how much it's worth in game. You multiply those together and it gives you a number which is their dollar per alpha UEC value, and it's actually in the top 5. But like what I was saying about gameplay, that also doesn't take gameplay into account, because obviously Origin has less gameplay than other ships. So value is good, but its gameplay is low. So that's the one thing that's like, if you look at, do the math doesn't always carry forward. So you do have to kind of go through the data that I've collected and manually sift through it, which is just why this took me so long to do, because it's a manual process. But yeah. All right, next one. everyone's favorite, the Mercury Star-Runner, which I think is actually really good value for its price when you put it up against something like the Sentinel. And there are a lot of people that really love the Sentinel. The Sentinel is a very unique ship at the moment with the E-Warfare, and I think that's probably why it's priced the way it is. But again, you kind of sit there and look at the two side by side, like one's a fighter with a bit of an internals, and the other one's like a fully fledged ship. As a and obviously one's half the price of the other in game, or more so. Yeah.
You've just got a lot more flexibility with the Mercury Star-Runner as well compared to the Sentinel. But the Sentinel, it's just the cost prices are going to be pretty significant. And that when we're getting to these levels, we're talking about the difference between 4 million and 2 million is like a month's worth of work. Maybe if you're lucky, or if you really know what you're doing, it's a couple of like a week or so. But still, it's a lot of gameplay comparison when you're looking at the money. It's like it's just not very much. It's not worth the money to buy as much to buy Sentinel as you could just earn it in game.
In the current event, in the Nine Towers event, the runs I've been doing this weekend, it's about 3 runs. So yeah. About half an hour. But yeah. They're pretty good runs at the moment. But anyway, all right. So this is something that really surprised me, because I do hate on the Eclipse a fair bit for its price, right? But it really surprised me here. Like, it's literally double the price almost of a Starfarer. And another one that I will just bring up really quick was someone said to me I should have used the Gemini, because the Gemini in-game's even cheaper again, but there is a caveat there where the Gemini upgrade actually gives you all the components of the original Starfarer. So in-game, when you buy it, it's literally just a cargo transporter. You don't get all the refineries and stuff like that, but when you buy it, you do get all the refineries. So there is a difference. And that's why I specifically used the Starfarer here, because to do that would have been in bad faith. So yeah, but that again surprises me. This tiny little fighter is actually worth a heap. So it actually does show you what John Crew was saying, that a lot of the ships are based on their components, and you'd have to imagine something like the Starfarer's got like more industrial, commercial components, where the Eclipse is obviously rocking military stealth. Yeah,
stealth. Yeah,
making a big difference. All right. Now, this one for me was very complexing, and it hurt my soul. I literally contacted Paul and said, you need to prepare yourself, because this one shook me. These are two of my favorite ships. And to know that there's only a $5 difference, but almost, half the price of one or the other. And I think this kind of is a good example of gameplay versus, because I think there's far more gameplay in the Caterpillar. I don't know. Would you agree with that, Paul?
I hate the freaking Redeemer. I do. So yes, of course I'd agree that the Caterpillar. It's also a huge difference that like the Caterpillar, it not only has more gameplay right now, but it's going to have more flexibility in the future. Whereas the Redeemer is just a gunship. It's never going to be anything but a gunship. Period. I know they want to do modularity and stuff like that.
I was just going to say,
but it's never going to be a hauler. You're never going to use a Redeemer for a hauler, but you could use a Caterpillar as a combat ship. It's unwieldy and difficult, but it's got some guns. It's got some thick guns on it in terms of and turrets for what it can do for. And who knows what other modules it can add. It could they could have modules in the future to turn a Caterpillar into a gunship if you wanted to. There's that much possibility with it versus a Redeemer, which is not going to really grow out of its shell that much. I
think this is a kind of unfair comparison almost in that way, because the Caterpillar is probably going to be the most flexible ship in the entire game, because of the modules. And I will say this about the Redeemer, though. The reason I like it is it's probably the most flexible combat ship in the game. I think you've got to give it that credit, right? Compared to most fighters,
it can do most of what you ask it to do in combat compared to most other combat ships. Yeah.
I think, Paul, you just hate it because it doesn't have lore. Once it has lore, I think you'll be fine.
Once it has good lore.
Yeah, we'll get you in there one day. I'll bring you around. It'll just take some time.
I'll make X to put up the or over there to put up the link to my video on the how I fix the Redeemer lore video. Up there.
I'll check that up there.
Yeah.
Cool. I can do that for you. No problem. All right. Next one. So this is where we start getting into really weird territory. And again, I could have picked multiple ships here. I've just picked ones that stood out to me. So yeah, the Reclaimer. This is actually the second best value ship in the entire game right now, based on this math. And it is math. That is literally what it is. And there's a massive price discrepancy there. I'm going to say roughly half the price out of game, and yeah, then in game it's 3 times the value. And the math there just does not add up, and you kind of go, huh. So yeah, it's ones like this that stood out. Sorry.
I'd say it's also important to remember that, like, the other thing that we didn't talk about in the caveats is how the rarity of these ships.
True.
It may be that you couldn't find a Reclaimer very often because there's just not as many of them that exist, that just weren't built as many. Whereas they have every other day they make an A2, you know, because it's a mass-produced ship in comparison. So there are going to be some of those things that'll end up in game as well. So there could be some of that factoring in with why the Reclaimer is so expensive.
Oh, you mean the A2 so expensive? But I get what you mean. Oh, you mean in game. Yeah, because I think the rarity will come with reputation. I think that's where they'll put it. And so if you want to get a particular ship, you'll have to go right up the grinding tree, so to speak, to get to the appropriate one. All right, so the best value in ship right now is actually the Carrack. It maxes out at about 44,000 Alpha UEC per dollar. And it is leagues better. Like the Reclaimer's like 39, so it's actually quite a substantially high amount.
And to remind people, $1 equals 1,000 UEC.
Yep.
So 44,000 is like per dollar is like effectively you're for every $44 in UEC value, you're getting $1. So that's a huge discount when you're factoring in the current way everything currently works. So.
Yeah. So to get that really simply, the way I had to do this for every ship though, is if you take the dollar amount and you divide it into the price of the ship, that's how you get to that amount, right? And the higher that amount is, then more valuable that ship is. And the Hammerhead, believe it or not, is still actually quite good value compared to most ships. It's only, I think it's in the top 20, but even then you can see there's a massive price discrepancy right there. You know, it goes up $100, but it's actually more than half the price. So it goes on and on and on. And there's no way to do this. As I said, like I'm getting 2 and comparing them for you at a time, but you could go through and you could just grab 2 yourself and compare it with the data. And there are some extreme examples.
And you can do so in the infographic on the description below, which you should go click on and check it out.
I may also actually put the Excel sheet in there too, if I get around to it, because the Excel sheet is interesting because you can filter it by different types and see different things. But yeah. All right, so this is one that I've known about for a really long time, and I think this is where we get into the ones where it's the same role. So here we have 2 fighters. I would say the Hawk is really not... How do I put this? The Hurricane is a real meta ship at the moment, and it's usually
the meta ship.
It's the first one I buy when I have money, right? And the Hawk would used to be the second one I'd buy, and I'd have the Hawk for myself when I'm solo, and the Hurricane for like dual play. But it's kind of nuts. It's half the price, the Hawk, out of game, but that you get in game, and it's slightly more expensive. So it's almost the epitome, like we're paying twice the price for, and I think that is really, when you break it down, is we are funding the game. That is literally what we're doing. Marketing are doing their job. They're trying to get as much money out of us as possible, but somehow along the line, it just also doesn't seem fair. And I think that's my only real issue with it. Like, I'm happy to pay for the game, but I kind of want to get what I'm paying for as well. And then we walk into that whole argument where it's a pledge, not a purchase.
Yeah, but you also have the issue with like $195 and you need to have another friend. So you also have to factor in if you bought a Hurricane, you want to get your friend involved, and you pay for the friend's game, that means you're spending $195 plus $45. Yeah. Whereas the Hawk, you don't need to do anything but yourself. You know, I don't know if there is a game package for the Hawk, but you could easily find one at some point with the game package with the Hawk, and it would still be a better value than the for your money than the Hurricane would be. So.
Yeah, you can always just upgrade another solo ship into the Hawk. if you wanted that. Yeah, so yeah, that's easy to do. All right, so now we go on to another one. Again, we're pairing roles now. So this is the Phoenix versus the 600i, and this is where I started to quite like really realize like how good, like of luxury ships. Like anyone will tell you that I'm not a fan of luxury ships.
You said 600i. It's the 400i.
I did. My bad. Yeah. So, but I'm not.
Someone in the chat someone in the comments would catch that. You know that would. So,
yeah. So long story short, I'm not a big fan of luxury ships. But that said, as luxury ships go, this is good value. And the other way to look at it though is like I can see someone talking in the comments. Oh, but the Phoenix is for 4 people, and the 400i is only for 3 people. So you've got to take all that into it as well. So on a dollar basis, I think clearly that means at some point the Phoenix's price has to increase to reflect more players. So this might be a good example of prices needing to be updated and fixed, and they probably most likely will down the road. So yeah. All right, so this was the one I was talking about where it just doesn't logically make sense to me at all. And I thoroughly believe, after having looked at this for a couple of hours, I think someone fumbled and put the prices backwards. Because if you were to flick them around, it makes so much more sense. But for some reason, out of game, the touring is cheaper, but then in game it's more expensive. And I think
makes no sense.
Yeah, which makes none at all, because also most people would tell you they would prefer the Explorer variant. It is the more interesting variant. It does the exploring and stuff like that, where the touring is the more just drive around and look at things and don't find anything new. It's more, that's more akin to the VIP gameplay and not the exploring part. So yeah,
I can see the price being a little bit more expensive in game, because it is in game you're getting it as you're paying for all these suites being added, whereas with the Explorer it's stripping it out, so it's a little bit cheaper. But in terms of gameplay, it makes more sense to get the Explorer versus the VIP transport right now. Maybe in the near future, VIP transport will pay you a lot more UEC for missions and stuff like that than exploration will, so that'll factor it out. But so I can see a little bit there. But in terms of like logic right now in game, no, it should be the opposite, because they can always change that later. So
so obviously, I think that's probably another caveat, Ed, then, is the passage of time. But we'll have to kind of wait and see for that one. All right, and we get into it. I think this is our second last one now. So basically, I've got the Hoplite here versus the Prowler. This is the one that we talked about a while ago, and it has actually improved, but it's still pretty bad. Back in the day, there was a lot of complaints about it because the Prowler was actually cheaper in game than the Hoplite. They have obviously made it so it now costs more, but I would still argue that's still pretty bad. Considering it's almost half the price, it's not half the worth. But this is again, I'm taking an older example where they have showed that they can change it and improve. So I'm hoping this shows that they will go back and fix some of the more ridiculous ones. And the final one here, I did actually want to include all 3, but I only included 2. And that's the C2 versus the A2. I did want to chuck the M2 in there, but the M2 literally kind of falls right in the middle. It's 520 off the top of my head, and then it's just over 5 mil. But when you look at those price differences, the way it jumps up, they don't necessarily line up with the value. The default price is just too high for all of them, especially the A2. But again, like you said, things like rarity and rep will most likely come into play there, because I'm assuming you're going to have to be in good with a military organization to get access to an A2, where the C2 will be a lot more commonly available because it's just civilian. So yeah, so hopefully those things do come into play. Anyway, that's kind of everything we've gone through. We've talked about this many times, but we've never really kind of like put the evidence in front of you. So I think by putting that in front of you today, I'm hoping that it kind of shows people what we've been talking about. And again, there is a now versus release mentality there, but we're buying the ships right now,
and you're using them right now. That's the other thing to remember.
Yeah,
is that is that if you are buying and playing the game right now and you're looking for a good value, I mean, obviously there's lots of other caveats with things like don't buy anything beyond a starter pack. There's no real need to.
Yeah.
All these things you get in a game. But if you're looking like, hey, I want to spend some money and I want to get the best value of my money for what I'm spending, you got to take a look at these sorts of things. Like, it just makes no sense to buy any ground vehicles when it costs literally like less than a couple of hours to buy them in game. So
yeah, things like the Blister and the Centurion. I don't have the Centurion yet, but when that's available in game, like I go in, I buy 2 Cyclones. I buy a normal one and I buy like the MT every time, and it's because they're just really cheap and they don't take almost any time to earn. But you know, if I wanted to go get a Freelancer Dur, well, that takes me a lot longer to get, as an example. But yeah, I think at the end of the day, a lot of this stuff is for more older backers that do have those bigger fleets. And like you said, Paul, we tend to recommend these days that, you know, just get one ship, one starter package, or one ship that you really like. But I going into multiple ships now, I just think that's a really bad idea. I think at the end of the day, you're better to consolidate upwards. We've kind of proven that with all the things we've shown in the past. And I think this is just a visualized evidence of that, and I hope this video helps some people understand, because I do have a lot of people that have come to us in the past and they have difficulty literally seeing it. But yeah, if anyone has any questions, hit us up on the Discord, and I'll be happy to go over them with you. And this is just some of the examples. There are many more in there as well. I was doing this solo. I probably, in hindsight, should have done it with a few people over my shoulder to pick out the results. But I also didn't want to actually hyper exaggerate it either. I didn't want to make it as worse as it possibly could be. So I've just got a random selection. So yeah. All right.
And as always, as we're wrapping it up, make sure you are subscribed to here. Make sure if you want to, we actually have a couple people hanging out with us as we're recording this right now. You can do that too if you want to come in. Just make sure you can join our Patreon and get involved in that. We want to hear your thoughts. We do.
Yep.
Are you surprised by this? Are you not surprised by this? Are you an old, salty veteran of the Inforunners and you've known this stuff for a while? Are you a new person going, wow, what is this? If you have questions, all sorts of things, let us know in the comments below. We do read all of them. We don't respond to every one of them, but we do read all of them. And yeah, like I said, subscribe, like the video if you enjoyed this. Helps spread the word, helps us grow, helps get the word out about us, because YouTube is a fickle mistress and she demands engagement and such like that. So
that she does. I do want to hear in the comments below people's thoughts on some of those comparisons, and were there any surprises there for you? Because I was generally shocked by a couple of them. I was quite taken back, and as you can see, do you think there are more factors in there that we possibly haven't considered? We did make a lot of caveats there today, but it is a part of the process that we go through where we try to recommend things to people. Is obviously the cost is a very big thing in this game. All right, with that, he's been the Astropub. Where can people find you, Paul, when you are not here with me?
Well, you can find my lore channel where I often do a podcast with Algrid called Lore Citizen. That's youtube.com/theastrohistorian. You can find my gameplay stuff where you'll see next week, or soon, I guess, depending on when this video comes out, you will see X and Keenan, Space Tomato, together. We'll be talking about, sitcom explanations. You can find that video for that one will be at youtube.com/theastropub live, which you can catch all my content from live channels. And you can catch me live at twitch.tv/theastropub on Thursdays, Fridays, Saturdays, and Sundays.
And you really know your stuff when it comes to lore, as does Algrid and Keenan, by the way. So yeah, and that actually does help with a lot of stuff. You'd be surprised how much the lore actually weighs in on this game. It's quite good to know stuff.
It helps you inform a lot of information about everything from ship releases to gameplay design. So
yeah, I put it right up there with just as important as the roadmap, as a way to kind of put it in a way that most people don't understand. All right, with that, he's been the Astropub. I've been Execute, and we'll catch you in the next one.